Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and we are live at 83weeks.com early on Friday, May 30th, 2025, for a little something we like to call Ask Eric Anything. Of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, Easy E, Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm in Park City, Utah with my family, my wife's side of the family. We're all here for a little mini family reunion of sorts. I've been through Park City about a million times, but I've never spent any time here and looking forward to it. It's a cool town.
I am excited to hear how your trip goes, but I'm most excited to talk to you about your big birthday. You had a big celebratory week this week before you were at a family reunion. It was your birthday, and I think most of us always remember that because it's around the same time that Scott Hall came down the steps on Nitro way back when. And you want to talk about this special birthday? Was it a big one? What'd you guys do? What was it like?
Um, just another day. I kind of been looking forward to it and working towards it. I wanted to make some real big changes physically prior to my 70th birthday, and did. And I was going to do this big reveal, but I'm not quite ready yet because I'm vain as fuck. And I'm not quite ready to do that yet. I mean, I'm close. I'm real close. So it was a big birthday in the sense of I had a goal that I wanted to achieve on this particular birthday. But beyond that, it's just another day. We didn't do anything special. It was just Lori and I over the Memorial Day weekend, and we had a great time, but we just hung out in town and went out to eat. I think on Sunday we went into town and had a couple cocktails and a bite to eat, but that was kind of it. No big deal, man.
Well, we love celebrating your big birthday in these parts, and we love celebrating good news. We got the news earlier this week that Jim Ross successfully completed his cancer surgery. I think he thought ahead of time it might be a 2-hour surgery. We're hearing it was closer to a 4-hour surgery, but we're hopeful that they got all of the cancer and it's been completely removed, and hopefully chemo and radiation are next. But man, that's great news that the voice of wrestling came through surgery just like we hoped.
Yeah, we hoped and we kind of knew because he's too damn stubborn and too damn tough to let something like, cancer get him down. It's just too tough. He's too stubborn, too ornery. Cancer stepped in and said, hey, let's go hang out with Jim Ross for a while. And it stuck around and went, nah, let's get the hell out of here. So I know the feeling.
If you get a chance, we want to encourage you, go tweet JR, some of your favorite Jim Ross memories. Just give him something positive on his feed. Whenever he has a chance to scroll through that feed, hearing from fans about what he's meant to their fandom is always a nice thing. So I want to encourage everybody to find JR at JR's BBQ on Twitter and send some love his way. We are throwing you guys the keys to the show today. You'll be able to ask Eric anything you want, so keep those questions coming. We've got some questions already selected from Twitter, locked and loaded. But Eric, I want to put something on your radar that you may have missed because I know you've been traveling and, well, it's been a crazy week with the holiday and your birthday and a family reunion. But did you see that Dustin Rhodes apparently is not too happy with the discussion that we had about him on last week's episode?
Yeah, I did see that, and I've kind of wrestled, no pun intended, with how or even if I should respond. One of the things that I noticed is that Dustin said he was going to talk a lot about the incident that we covered in his book. Has that book already been written, or is there a new book coming out?
I think he's talking about a new book, but he did have a book that was done years ago when he was doing the Goldust persona in the WWF. But yes, I think he's working on another book, is what was insinuating.
And in his first book, because I didn't read it, in his first book, did he discuss this situation that we're referring to?
I don't recall. Just to catch our audience up, we're talking about Dustin Rhodes and the way he left WCW after Uncensored 1995. Dustin was our topic last week. I thought we did if I do say so myself, I was proud of the job we did on the Dustin episode, and I thought that we were more than fair and super complimentary. But I guess when it came down to the particulars of his exit from WCW, there was a lot of differing opinions, I suppose, between the way you remember it and the way he remembers it. So we discussed this where Mike Graham was the agent for Barry Darsow and Dustin Rhodes in a King of the Road match, which was basically a match that was filmed in the suburbs of Atlanta on the back of a flatbed truck. And I guess there was a no blood policy. Mike Graham bought the blades that day and got them ready for the guys, and they did it. And then, of course, they were fired. So Dustin took to Twitter to say, and on another note, Eric Bischoff was speaking on my firing of WCW about bleeding. Number one, and this will be talked about in my book at length, I reached out beforehand to Craig Leathers and was told we could. I would never disobey what my boss says. Number two, why did Hogan bleed on that same pay-per-view, but it was okay? Need to get your facts straight. I lost my job and they did not. You know why? Because Hogan and his boys had just arrived and they needed to clear out a few contracts. It was wrong, but you know what I didn't do? Sue. Because I knew I was going to be just fine because I bust my ass each and every time I'm out there and have had an extraordinary career. For the record, I don't have a problem with Eric, but this shouldn't have been talked about on air. I'm Dustin fucking Rhodes, a charismatic, hardworking legend. Man, this shit pisses me off.
All right, Conrad, let me jump right in here because this will get complicated quick. Let's put that graphic back up there again, please, Super Dave. So let's start with the end, where he says, I don't have a problem with Eric, but this shouldn't have been talked about on the air. Well, according to a wrestling historian who's here with us, Dustin did talk about it in his first book. So I'm not going to make a statement, but I'm going to ask a question to Dustin. Why is it okay for you to talk about it in your first book, this incident? And why is it okay that you plan on going into depth on the subject in your next book, but somehow I shouldn't talk about it on my podcast? Tell me how that works. Explain that math to me, because it's really interesting math, Dustin. And I love Dustin. I think the world of him. And that's not going to change. But when we're talking about getting our facts straight, let's do just that, just for a moment. The other thing I want to address is, let's go up to number one. I reached out beforehand to Craig Leathers and told we could. I would never disobey what my boss says. Craig Leathers wasn't your boss. Unless you worked in the production team, Craig Leathers was not your boss. I was. Mike Graham was not your boss. I was. And one of the reasons that I think I had to draw, I guess, a line in the sand, or maybe to say it even more bluntly, to make an example out of Dustin and Barry Darsow, who, by the way, was a friend of mine too, still had to fire him, because I was explicit as the boss not to intentionally get blood. That was my directive to all of the talent. You went to, now this is the first I heard it was Craig Leathers' approval. I have always heard it was Mike Graham, but now it's Craig Leathers, which is fine, because the reason that I drew that line in the sand and the reason I had to make an example is because the culture in WCW up until that point, when it came to the wrestling side of the equation and the creative side of the equation, is if you're a talent and you didn't necessarily like what was laid out to you on any given night for your television appearance, the kind of common theme was, well, if you don't like what this person's telling you, just go find somebody else and ask them. And if that answer doesn't work for you, then you can go ask this person over here. All of these people that I'm referring to are people that would be on the creative team or on the production side of the equation, as in Craig Leathers. So in other words, if I don't like, Conrad, what you're asking me to do, I'm going to go to somebody who works with you, pitch plead my case to that individual, And if I can get some sympathy there, if I can get, yeah, that should be okay. Well, then I've got to get out of jail free card. What I was faced with at that time is getting that situation under control. And with respect to blood, it wasn't my choice not to get blood. It wasn't my choice to let all of the talent know it's not acceptable. That was a mandate that was handed down to me from my bosses. And after making it explicitly clear from me to the talent and everybody else involved, not to get blood intentionally, we did it. Anyway, now I'm going to accept the fact that I probably didn't handle it as well as I could. In hindsight, I could have been more clear, I guess. But the fact that Dustin takes exception to the fact that he would never go against his boss, but yet he goes to Craig Leathers, someone who's not his boss, to give permission to do something his boss made clear not to do, it just doesn't really sit that well. Now, as far as Hogan, as I said the last time we touched on that, I'm going to go back and look at that. I definitely am. Because I can't, as I said last week, I can't comment on something that I haven't seen or don't remember. But I'll watch it and then I'll follow up on this particular subject next time we do a podcast, because I really want to dig into this. Really want to dig into it. But look, Dustin doesn't want me to talk about it, but he's pretty comfortable talking about it. Dustin says he would never go against his boss. Well, he did, which is why I had to make an example out of him. And I didn't want to, because Dustin was a friend. I was tight with Dusty. If anybody suggested, and this is the part that I guess I take exception to, it was because Hogan and his friends came in and we had to make room. In other words, we had to fire some people to make room for Hogan and his friends. That's the chicken shit part of this that really disappoints me. One had nothing to do with the other. And for Dustin to subscribe my intent and get inside of my head and decide what my motivations were, it's really not fair, Dustin. It's not fair. You don't have all of the information. I understand why you would have been upset. I understand why I'm disappointed in the way I handled it. I really am. However, it had nothing to do with Hogan and making room for contracts. That's absurd. That's a blame somebody else, put the heat on Hogan. It has nothing to do with Hogan's contract or anybody else's for that matter. That was lame. It was weak. And I was disappointed. And I hope Dustin forgives me for addressing this the way that I have, but he felt, I guess, necessary to address it once in his book and coming up shortly. But if we're going to get our facts straight in your next book, Dustin, make an effort to get the facts straight. Still love you.
You know what I hate about this whole thing is, Eric, I mean, there was so much love and respect and appreciation just pouring out of your side towards Dustin and his whole family last week that I feel like he probably didn't hear the episode and he's just been told that this is what's said, or maybe he heard a clip and I don't know, maybe he felt differently about it, that if he had the context, because we've said it many times on this program, context is king. If he had the context of the entire episode, I don't know. I think maybe he'd feel differently.
Well, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. You know, I've seen Dustin. I mean, there's no heat between us, or at least there wasn't until probably now that I've actually responded to what Dustin said. And I debated whether I was going to respond to it or not, because responding to something like this, all it does is keep it alive and probably,
yes,
you know, makes it worse in the long run. And a large part of me was just going to, yeah, whatever. It's not going to change my life one way or the other. But when I saw the comment about I was fired to make room for Hogan and his friends, that was such a bullshit comment, and had nothing to do with the facts. As long as we're talking about facts, that's the part that really got under my skin. And I felt, you know, let's let's clear the air. That was the statement that made me go, you know what? Maybe I should respond. And of course, it's the first thing we did this morning. So hopefully this will be the end of it. But if Dustin would ever want to sit down and talk about it, I'd be happy to do it. Grab a steak, reminisce, talk about old times, and clean the air on this one. Happy to do that.
And at the end of that steak dinner, I'm sure you guys will split the bill with Cash App. Cash App is the new way to do it, man. I have to admit, I was a late adopter. I used some of the other more clunky apps. We don't have to call any names, but you know what we're talking about. But once I really understood what Cash App was all about, I was all in. Making money moves should be easy, and that's why there's Cash App. It's fast, it's safe, and it's honestly just way more personalized than all the other apps out there. There's no extra hoops to jump through. There's no extra stress. All the tools are right there to help you cash in. Plus, sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They're out here looking out for you. If something seems pretty sketchy or suspect, and they think you might be sending money to a potential scammer, they're going to give you a heads up, so you'll think twice before you hit send. Think of Cash App as like your personal bodyguard for your cash. You can also spice up your payments. They got custom text options, stamps, and backgrounds. It's going to make splitting bills with your friends or family or whatever a little more fun. And if for some insane reason you don't already have Cash App, I want you to just go download it right now from your phone's app store and then sign up and enter our code 83 weeks in your profile. When you do that, just send $5 to a friend and you'll get $10 just for getting started. I know that sounds like free money, so I'll repeat it. For a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch. Just download the Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code 83 weeks in your profile and then send $5 to a friend within 14 days and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. We're live here with Eric Bischoff taking your questions, and we've got a bunch coming in. A little bit of love from little Jimmy Sorensen, who's with us, who says, "You're the best. We appreciate you." AOTV Productions has the question that everybody's been talking about all week. Hey, Eric, what are your thoughts on Johnny Ace turning on Vince? Any chance he turns on Janelle last minute? Of course, this is about the John Laurinaitis piece of business when it is related to Vince McMahon. So Vince McMahon is still embroiled in a lawsuit with this accuser who used to work for WWE. And once upon a time, Johnny Ace was aligned with Vince McMahon. But now it feels like he's aligned against Vince McMahon. So I guess this will mean that John can stop writing checks to attorneys, and maybe John isn't going to be in any sort of legal trouble or criminal trouble. But this is probably not exactly the news Vince McMahon was looking for. What say you, Eric?
God, I don't know. I mean, I read that. I kind of want it, it's like when you get near the mud, eventually you get muddy, you get dirty. If you play too close to the mud, and this is pretty muddy, and I really don't have any comments. I don't know anything about it. I don't have any inside or detailed or strong opinions about it, other than the whole situation is really, really, really unfortunate for everybody. I don't know. I mean, anytime you have somebody join the prosecution, or in this case, in the civil suit, the complainant, I guess, and has the ability to expose things that might otherwise not be exposed, that would be a problem. That would be something to be concerned with in general. But beyond that, man, I don't know. It's just so unfortunate. I think that's why I try not to think about it too much, because it is so unfortunate for so many people. And it's not even the principals. Vince and everybody involved in that situation has got to take some responsibility for allowing themselves to be put in that situation. It's at some point we all have the ability to say no and walk away. And you can talk about the manipulation and the pressure, and you can talk about a lot of different things. At the end of the day, you make a choice. And for the principals involved in this, they made that choice under whatever circumstances. however bad they may have been, they made the choice, and they paid the price. They're paying the price every single day. Vince McMahon is paying the price. We talked about it. The relationship or lack thereof with his family as a result of this. That's a really, really big price to pay. Vince is probably not even welcome in the company that he built. That's a big, big price to pay. The public humiliation is a price to pay. And Johnny's had to deal with that. Grant's had to deal with that. And there's so much collateral damage to friends and family that everybody's paying the price. And I just want to stay as far outside of it as I can. And I just look forward to the day that it's over and no longer popping up on our news feed.
Amen to that. I hope that we get some sort of positive resolution for everyone sooner rather than later. But there has been a lot of other discussion about Vince McMahon this week. AOTV Productions is still with us here live and says, what do you think about the rumor that Vince wants to buy WWE back? How unlikely is that? I think this all starts with Jonathan Coachman, who I believe has some sort of connection to the McMahon family. I don't know all the details, but I guess there's speculation that maybe started on Jonathan Coachman's podcast that perhaps Vince would like to buy the WWE back. There was a lot of response I saw online saying that, well, TKO's not interested in that. I mean, what would you expect if they were asked that sort of question? But is there a scenario? Is it even possible, Eric? Do you think one day? I mean, I guess we always hear never say never in wrestling, but that feels pretty close to never to me, doesn't it to you?
Yeah, it feels that way, but when Vince McMahon is involved, I tend to lean into the never say never a lot more. I mean, I can't imagine a scenario where that would be plausible. Take that back. Likely. I can't imagine a scenario where that would be likely. However, it is plausible. TKO may not be interested, but it's a publicly held company. Depending on the offer, TKO has no choice but to be interested because they have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders to maximize shareholder value. And if Vince somehow, some way, I don't know, let's just throw Saudi into the mix, put together a fund that would make a legitimate offer for a publicly held company, interested or not, it has to be entertained. Now, I know almost nothing about mergers and acquisitions other than they suck, having been through one that didn't turn out too well for anybody involved in the entire company, not just WCW, but Turner Broadcasting as a whole. That was a disaster. It has gone down, I think, in financial business circles as the AOL Time Warner Turner merger as being the worst corporate merger of all time. So that speaks to itself, but for itself, I should say. But it's plausible. It is plausible that Vince could put together enough money to make an offer for a publicly held company that, because it would have a positive potentially impact on shareholder value, the offer would have to be entertained. You could probably find a million ways to not accept it, but it doesn't mean you can't not entertain it. That's my take. And again, I don't know enough. I'm not an expert. I don't live in the merger and acquisition world, but I think I'm probably right or close to it.
I do want to ask you some merger and acquisition news, but before we do, you mentioned Saudi. Listen, there's the old cliche we've all heard before, Eric. Telephone, telegram, telewrestler. And a couple of days ago, I heard something that I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. We just recently heard that the WWE is in fact rescinding the announcement that they're going to take WrestleMania to New Orleans next year. And a lot of people are of the belief that, well, that means Las Vegas is getting WrestleMania again. And I have to admit, that's what I thought too. And maybe that still is the case. Maybe that is where it lands. But through the Wrestler Whisper campaign, I heard, and again, not directly from WWE, but from someone around, WWE might be doing WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia next year. And when I heard that, I thought that just doesn't. I don't think that's. I can't imagine that after they just announced New Orleans. I could maybe buy into moving to Las Vegas. Would you be surprised if WrestleMania next year was in Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
I would too.
Yes. That would be. I mean, it's like the NFL. Are we surprised when the NFL has games over in Europe? No. When they play in Mexico, are we surprised? No. But if they move the Super Bowl there,
right,
that's a little different, right? That'd be a big move, and I think somewhat risky in the sense that your core audience would feel somewhat disenfranchised. I mean, let's face it, the U.S. audience is the largest percentage of their viewing audience. Well, maybe that's not even true anymore. India's pretty big. But whatever the case may be, this is still, WWE is an American entertainment brand. And to take your showcase event and move your uniquely American brand to another country, any country, Saudi, England, Germany, France, Italy, India, doesn't matter. Country doesn't matter. To take it out of the U.S. would be like taking the Super Bowl or the World's. Can you imagine Major League Baseball taking the World Series out of the U.S.?
No.
That's how it rubs me. That's just my visceral, I like that word, visceral reaction.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is, it still seems far-fetched. And again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but when I heard someone say, well, I heard, normally I would have just totally dismissed it. But then I started to think, well, they did just remove the announcement for New Orleans. They would have to have a major opportunity fall in their lap to walk that back. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
Well,
By the way,
let's add another layer. Didn't they just move Crown Jewel to Australia?
yes, they did.
I mean, this is a fun little game. You know, it's like what if, speculation, all that. What's that term that I hate? Hypothetical.
Oh, yeah.
That's what this is. But it's sometimes fun, right? But when you look back, you go, wait a minute. I mean, because it was kind of odd that they moved Crown Jewel to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I didn't even think of that. But if that's real, let me just say it is going to create a huge opportunity. I do believe it'll create a huge opportunity. I do want to ask you about something that I can't believe no one else is talking about that we haven't been hit over the head with yet, but I think you're going to like it. Before we do, I want to thank Stopbox for sponsoring today's program. And here's the deal. If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two frustrating categories. It's either locked away, meaning it's safe, but it's out of reach in case of an emergency, or it's unsecured, which means you've left it vulnerable to anyone. Well, Stopbox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution. It's called the Stopbox Pro. And with the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness again. Its ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast, reliable access when every second matters without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, no power needed. I'm a big believer in this product, and I love this company. All their manufacturing facilities are done right here in the United States. This creates great jobs for the American worker. It also ensures the highest quality products getting shipped out. They've also got a Stopbox Pro that's TSA compliant. I never even think of that, but if you need it, Stopbox Pro checks all your boxes. And right now, for a limited time only, our listeners can get a crazy deal. How about 10% off your entire order when you use the code 83 weeks? And right now, Stockbox is also running a deal on their most popular bundle. That's the 2-pack. That'll save you over 30%, and it comes with free accessories and shipping. That's 10% off and a big bundle discount when you use the code 83 weeks at StopboxUSA.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with Stopbox. So, Eric, we've talked a little bit about All In, which is going to be AEW's first stadium show here in America, and it certainly felt like WWE has counter-programmed the hell out of it. We know that originally All In was going to be on Saturday, July 12th, an evening show. WWE announces Saturday night's main event live on NBC and Peacock on that same Saturday night. So AEW moves to an afternoon time start. And then they announced NXT Great American Bash is going to be that same day in the afternoon. And oh, by the way, the very next day, we're going to run the Evolution pay-per-view, the first ever women's pay-per-view, but this is the sequel now, I guess 7 or 8 years later. This feels a little Jim Crockett Promotions, WWF counter-programming. I got to tell you, as an old school fan, I like it. And I know as a business guy, you got to love this sort of thing, don't you?
It's good for business. It's good for business. Competition creates better product, right? Creates cash. Forces people to up their game. I proved that more than anybody in the wrestling business. I proved that. And this is AEW's opportunity to step up their game. Tony talks, and I'm not bearing, this is not me being negative. Tony likes to talk about being the challenger brand. Now's the time to be a challenger brand. Whether it's intentionally, I think the NBC date, I think that's a little bit, that's a stretch. It's not like NBC can just arbitrarily, because they hear AEW is doing something, and Nick Khan or Ari Emanuel calls their contacts over at NBC and says, "Hey, I don't care what you have programmed before. Let's do a Saturday night main event on that night." That's not how television works, folks, especially at the network level. The advertising for those shows are sold in advance. There's commitments in advance. There's promotional things. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not like programming a social media channel. Let's put it that way. It's a very complicated thing, programming a network. And they would have known, they meaning NBC, would likely have known 6 months ago that this date is the date that they would likely want to pencil in a Saturday night main event. My point in all this, because I'm guessing, I don't know anything other than how things kind of normally work typically. And it would be atypical for the Saturday night main event to be some kind of counter programming measure more than it is coincidence. I think that portion of this is coincidence. I think the rest of it is fun.
Eric, there's no chance it's a coincidence. The AEW announced this stadium show a year ago.
All right.
So this date is...
That's a good point. I agree. It makes it less likely then. I didn't realize that it was announced a year ago. My bad.
Well, I'm not cutting you off. I mean, here's the thing that I think you're going to love about this. Throw that graphic up there of the 3 shows again, so if you don't mind. So this is the Great American Bash in Atlanta. This is Evolution in Atlanta. And this is Saturday night's main event in Atlanta. I don't know. I have no inside information, but I felt like an idiot because I can't believe no one's talking about this. Do you want to take a stab at what the main event on Saturday night's main event is going to be, what the big headline attraction is going to be, Eric?
I couldn't even guess.
Bill Goldberg's last match. We've heard that Goldberg is working on his last match. We've heard that he's planning his WWE retirement. It's coming up soon. he said in interviews it's happening down south. Where else would it make sense for Goldberg to have his last match other than Atlanta? And what a big attraction, since you're out of the pay-per-view business, to say that you're going to give Goldberg's last match to NBC live for Saturday night's main event. Like, no one has told me this. I'm just saying, boy, isn't that logical that this would be the home of Goldberg's last match, head-to-head with AEW All In? My goodness, Eric.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and it'll do very well. Good for Bill. Good for Saturday night's main event, because that's going to be a hell of a show. Should get a pretty big number. I read the other day that this last Saturday night main event did really well. One of the better ratings they've had since they started, if I remember the story correctly. This will probably be bigger than that. So that's cool. What I'm curious about, though, that's a lot of wrestling in Atlanta, right?
Well, but again, it's NXT.
Great American Bash is at center stage, so that's not going to be hard to fill.
Right. I mean, I just think they're clearly going to be leaning into the WCW nostalgia, bringing back Dusty Rhodes' creation, the Great American Bash, doing it in Atlanta. And then, of course, they're going to have, we believe, I'm guessing, no one's told me this, but it is logical to imagine that would be the site of Goldberg's last match. I think it's also logical to expect that if I'm WWE, I think I'd want you there, Eric, wouldn't I?
I don't know. I think my value as an on-camera talent has diminished to the point that I don't think it would be added value. I think it'd be kind of cool. It'd be nice it'd be like garnish on the plate. But at the end of the day, it won't matter.
I don't know. I'd love to think that there were a bunch of WCW cameos. Like, if Goldberg really is going to have his last match in Atlanta, and I get there's a variety of reasons the timing wouldn't make sense, but as a longtime wrestling fan, I do think it would be cool to see Hulk Hogan and Goldberg in the ring together one last time. I'm not saying as a match, just a photo op, just the image of Hogan and Goldberg in Atlanta with the old big gold belt. I don't know. It just feels like
I think
the appropriate thing to do.
That's one that I think would be added value. That I would be excited to see, because it kind of connects the dots. Really,
yeah.
It was Atlanta. It was Hulk Hogan that said, "I want to get Bill Goldberg over as much as I can," and volunteered to do business for Bill, with Bill, in Atlanta. That wasn't my idea. That wasn't Bill's idea. That wasn't Ted Turner's idea. That was Hulk Hogan's idea, because he believed that much in Bill Goldberg. Shocked me, shocked everybody else, but was just so excited to be able to bring that to Atlanta. And I don't remember what the attendance was, somewhere around 35, 45,000 people for a live television show that you could have stayed at home and watched. That's pretty freaking awesome. And I think because of that night, because of that moment, and because of what that moment did for Bill Goldberg, I think it would be unfortunate if Hulk Hogan wasn't there, even if it's just sitting ringside. Doesn't need an interview, don't need a promo, but to not have Hulk there for a match like this would be, I don't know, an incomplete story.
They need to throw together, the Steiners and you and DDP. Let's just get a box of WCW legends there for Goldberg's last match, if that really is what they're going to do. We'll stay tuned. We'll see. But, my wrestling math says that's probably the direction they're going. I also wanted to get your take on the announcement that WWE is headed to Philadelphia. We recently discussed here on the program that AEW is going to be doing a residency where they're going to run like 6 shows. I guess it's, 3 weeks worth of shows here. But it's just been announced that NXT is going to be there the night before or the week before. So right before that all begins for NXT or for AEW at the 2300 Arena, NXT is going to be there a week early. I don't know why, but I find this hysterical to me. Is this just comedy at this point, Eric?
I don't know. I think it's fun.
It is funny.
It's awesome. It's awesome. This is I mean, again, it's up to AEW to respond, of course, and make it a real war. But at least from a scheduling perspective, I have to throw in the towel and say, yeah, you poked the bear. Here it comes. Hope you like bears.
Hey, I do want to ask you about Tony Khan because he did a press conference after his pay-per-view Double or Nothing last weekend from Glendale, Arizona, and he was asked about the counter programming that WWE's been doing lately, like the announcement of NXT being an afternoon show. And Tony said, quote, "It's been pretty consistent. I'd say it's the most consistent event head-to-head scheduling I've seen since Jim Crockett Promotions. So a lot of scheduling that went that way. I can tell you this will go a lot differently than that did." So that's Tony's reaction. Of course, we know that ultimately it became a pissing contest with JCP and WWE, and ultimately JCP was headed for bankruptcy and sold to Ted Turner. What do you make of Tony's response? I mean, when he's asked a question like that, that's about as good of an answer as you can give, right?
No. Again, it implied a threat at the end. This is going to go differently than that. I understand why he said it, but there's a point where this is the part that I think Tony just doesn't relate to. It's how to get yourself over, how to get your company over, and how not to. How not to is to thump your chest and call yourself a challenger brand and come out and talk about and having your talent. And I haven't seen it happen in a while. So I'm referring to, probably 2019 for sure through 23 or later, when you have, the head of the company, in this case, Tony, and a lot of his top talent constantly denigrating the competition, this being WWE in this case, and positioning yourself as a better property, as a better organization with better quality product. I understand why you want to do that instinctively, but unless you are a better product, all that does is draw comparisons, and they're not favorable to you. It's better to put your competition over until you're ready to compete. By that, I mean, if I was Tony in the situation that Tony's in, I would be cheering WWE on, and I'd be telling my audience that I'm going to do everything in my power to compete, and I'll survive this, and it's going to be fun. Help me do it. Engage your audience. Embrace the competition. Don't denigrate your competition, particularly when they're like 5 or 7 light years ahead of you in every respect. In every measurable way, other than your emotional frame of reference. And, that's not a knock. That's human nature. Will Ospreay continually going out there and maintaining that the in-ring product at AEW is light years ahead or ahead of that in WWE is comical. It's a comical statement to make. It's a ridiculous statement to make. And it will invite fans to look at your in-ring product from a subjective position, meaning they're not the ones in the ring. They're looking at that product, and they're looking at the WWE product, and you lose a lot of credibility that way. That's not how you get people on your side, by making a statement like that, drawing attention to the difference between the two products. And in this case, Will Ospreay looking like a goof. Because if you look at the totality of the product, if you look at AEW from the top down, the product is really bad in some respects. Just the physical narrative of the show, the wrestling itself. Yeah, you've got some really cool high spots in there with guys like Ospreay. Admittedly, able to do some amazing things in the ring that very few other people can or are willing to do. Good for him. But AEW as a whole, I am sorry. 70% of what I see when I look through their cut, and I don't sit there and watch every week. However, I do see and catch up with a lot of their product and social media. The good stuff that everybody's talking about is so great, as well as the rest of it. There's a lot of stuff in here that looks like WCW circa 1991, and not in a good way. The women's match that I saw clips of early this morning, I don't remember who was in it, don't remember the names, they're relatively new, should have never, ever happened in front of a camera. Women were completely not ready for prime time, which is fine. Not everybody's going to come out of the gate a superstar. It takes time. But while you're building, don't compare yourself to the juggernaut. It's just not the way to get people engaged in your brand and want to fight on your behalf. I told you the story last time about a particular talent that I'm not going to name, who tried so hard to get himself over that it became almost obnoxious. And when I finally pulled him aside and said, dude, you put yourself over so strongly, so consistently, that you're taking away the opportunity for the fans to do it on your behalf. That's the magic in getting yourself over, whether you're in the ring or whether you're the business side of the equation. Learn how to get people on your side, and not just the hardcore, the sickos as they're referred to. And I don't know if that's derisive or not anymore. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. But not only that 600,000, the group of 600,000 fans are going to watch no matter what. We got another 800 or 900 or 1 million fans out there that could be on your side. You have the platform. It's not like they can't find you. They choose not to watch you. Figure out why they choose not to watch you and get them on your side. That's television. That's being a television producer. That's being a brand builder. Don't satisfy the market you have. Find a way to increase the market by learning why the people that don't like your product, and then fix it, or at least attempt to, as opposed to veiled threats that we've all heard before and nothing happens. I don't know. Maybe Tony's thinking in his mind, Jim Crockett had to file for bankruptcy. Ted Turner bought essentially the assets of Jim Crockett Promotions out of bankruptcy to launch WCW. And in that respect, I agree with Tony. It's probably not going to end up the same way. Technically speaking, no, likely it won't. Crockett's didn't have $1 billion to play with. Tony presumably does. So that will change the outcome. But it's similar to one of his earlier press conference where he addressed the same things, and he came out and he was all hot. Says, I'm not going to put up with this shit. Oh, really? What are you going to do about it? So far, nothing. That's what I mean about throwing down a gauntlet. Until you're ready to back it up, put your competition over. People will root more for you if you're putting your competition over than they will if you're constantly taking shots at the guy that's beating your ass in every conceivable way.
With prices going up on just about everything lately, being smart with your money isn't just a good idea, it's essential. But managing subscriptions, tracking your spending, cutting costs, well, it can all feel overwhelming. Lucky for you, Rocket Money takes the guesswork out of all of it so you can make smart decisions. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and even help you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. And for the ones you don't want anymore, well, Rocket Money can help you cancel them. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. You can even easily create personalized budgets with custom categories, all to help you keep your spending on track. You can even set alerts. So if your bills are going to increase in price or there's unusual spending activity, or if you're getting close to going over budget. There's even a new goals feature. Rocket Money's the real deal. They'll even try to negotiate to lower your bills for you. You see, they automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and then you can ask them to negotiate on your behalf. They deal with customer service. You don't have to. Rocket Money has over 5 million users. They've saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Download the Rocket Money app and enter the show name 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff in the survey so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Download the Rocket Money app today and tell them you heard about them from us at 83 Weeks. Eric, we've got a live studio audience here. Let's do a question here. Matt LaRusso says, planning a road trip from with the family to Yellowstone from South Florida, and I was planning to check out the Cody area. Are there any recommendations on restaurants or must-sees in or around town? How about that? We got a Cody visitor. What do you recommend out that way, Eric?
Oh, well, in general, the restaurants in Cody are okay. There's no special restaurants in Cody. The Trailhead is pretty good. If you just want one of the best burgers in the West, in the Rocky Mountain West, I would say the Silver Dollar Bar right downtown. There's a great little lunch place there called City's Table, Sittis. Great Mediterranean food. Other than that, that's it. But there's so much to do otherwise. One of the coolest museums in the country is there, the Museum of the West. It used to be called the Buffalo Bill Cody Museum. It's really 5 different museums under one roof. I think it's called the Remington Western Art Museum is there, one of the largest collections of Western art, probably anywhere in the world. Amazing stuff there. Artists like Charles Russell, for example, who's famous for Western art. The Firearms Museum is second to none from an historical perspective. So if you're interested in the history of firearms, not only in the United States, but from around the world, it's an amazing museum. Natural History Museum is there. My favorite part is the Plains Indian Museum. I've always been fascinated with Plains Indian history. By Plains Indian, I mean North, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, kind of the northern part of the Rockies and a little bit east of the Rockies. That part of American history, and Native American history in particular, has always been of interest to me. Read a number of books on it over the years. But there is a museum there that is second to none when it comes to Native American history. So I would check that out for sure. But if you just want to do outdoor stuff, there's a rodeo 7 nights a week starting June 1st through Labor Day. Rodeo is always fun. And a lot of good rodeo too. It's not just a local rodeo. These are cowboys and cowgirls that compete all over the West all summer long. And Cody's an important stop on that tour because they're all riding for points, trying to qualify for something. So the rodeo is always fun. River rafting, it's all over the place, right? The river, North and South Fork of the Shoshone River coming out of Yellowstone is a blast. Horseback riding, hiking. There's a lot to do here, really.
Hope you enjoy your time in Cody. We've got another question from, I'm going to butcher it. Mr. Cox says, good morning, Eric and Conrad. Eric, if you could manage a talent in the wrestling business today and help him on the path to be a world champion, who would it be? Thank you for the years of memories. Who do you have your eye on as a top young up-and-coming talent that you think, hey, that could be fun if you were to get to do your best Bobby Heenan on the outside for that guy?
For me personally, I would have the most fun working with a really young, like an NXT star or somebody hoping to become a star in NXT. That would be fun because you're working with moldable clay, people that are willing to listen, people that are willing to learn, people that haven't developed their own habits, good and bad. Because it's hard. I've never golfed, but I think a good metaphor might be trying to unteach a golf swing. Meaning, I would imagine golfers who are really intent on learning the game, practice their swing and practice their swing and practice their swing. And in the process of practicing that swing over years, you develop habits that are not necessarily good habits, right? You don't even notice them. Form. whatever. It's harder to untrain that bad habit than it is to train in a good habit from the beginning. So working with somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience can be the most rewarding because you don't have to undo anything. They're just moldable clay in your hands, and it's up to you to shape it and make art out of it as a director or coach, I guess. There's a guy in NXT that I really like because I worked with him for about 5 minutes in the ring, Ridge Holland. I've had a few conversations with Ridge since that time. We've become, I don't want to say friends, we're friendly, right? Haven't gone out to have a beer or anything like that, but we started communicating. That's an example of somebody that would be fun to work with because they're so wide open and so eager to learn and driven to succeed. That's fun. That's fun. So I'd throw my hat in the ring for Ridge just because I've had a chance to get to know him a little bit.
Great question. Jared Crayston is with us, and of course, everybody watched Dark Side of the Ring this past weekend, or I guess it was this past Tuesday. It was the season finale, and it was on Muhammad Hassan. Jared wants to know, what do you remember from Muhammad Hassan in his 04-05 years when you were working as the general manager on Raw? I just saw the Dark Side of the Ring with him. The real-life Mark Capone, super nice guy. What was your experience like with Muhammad Hassan?
I never, I don't recall because I don't think we really worked together directly in the ring. I don't recall having any segments with him or even dialogue. So in that regard, I have little or no memory of him. In terms of, seeing him backstage and passing each other in the hallway or seeing each other in catering and just saying hello and, general day-to-day communication or acknowledgement, seemed like a really nice guy. I probably have had a couple conversations with him, but they were always just general conversations, nothing heavy, nothing serious. My impression was just he was a young, eager, very talented, and friendly person. That's about all I remember.
We got another question here from Stellar Steven who says, did Eric consider promoting folk style or Greco wrestling as well as freestyle wrestling? Of course, this is all about real American freestyle. Were any other types of wrestling considered, Eric, or was freestyle always the answer?
Well, to clear it up a little bit, folk style is high school wrestling. The rules for high school wrestling are different than freestyle wrestling. Greco wrestling is differentiated from both of them in that you can't attack your opponent's legs. All of your takedowns, your throws are all upper body throws. No use of the legs. You can't do a single leg takedown or a double leg takedown or trips or hook. You can't. It's against the rules. Everything has to come from the waist up, right? See a lot of suplexes in Greco. That's the thing. That's the move that most people would recognize. That is very much a Greco kind of move. It's all upper body, right? I prefer Greco. I enjoy watching Greco. I wrestled Greco for about 2 years out of high school when it was the AAU sanctioning. The Amateur Athletic Union was the sanctioning body, and there were AAU sanctioned both freestyle and Greco tournaments all over the Midwest, and that's where I was competing at that time. I was better at Greco because I had dead legs. my legs were slow, so I was easy to take down, or easier than I should have been to take down. And with Greco, because I had good upper body strength and just mechanically, I just adapted to Greco more quickly than freestyle. I prefer Greco, but freestyle is the most popular style of wrestling around the world. It's the Olympic style of wrestling, so that's what we're going for. We are talking about introducing Greco at some point down the road because I think it should be a part of our organization, but not until after we really get established with the brand and the audience begins to understand what freestyle wrestling is. Unless you're a wrestler, competitor or friends and family of a competitor, freestyle wrestling is kind of, yeah, you know it exists, but you're not really sure how it works. So part of our job is to not only bring great action to the ring and great stories. That's going to be the biggest challenge, is creating stories, because these are real people. These are going to be real stories, not fictional, scripted stories. It's finding their character, the respective characters in our athletes, and bringing them to life in an entertaining way through storytelling. That's going to be a big challenge. The action in the ring, part of that is going to be a challenge because people just don't, outside of the wrestling community, don't really quite understand it. But that's why we've got guys like Chael Sonnen. We're talking to Daniel Cormier. We're bringing people in that will be able to not only entertain the audience while they're covering the action in color and play-by-play, but they're going to be able to educate the audience at the same time. Edutainment is the word of the day when it comes to Real American Freestyle. So it's like MMA. I may have said this, if you've heard this before, Conrad, please stop me, but I used an analogy in an interview, I think last week. 15 years ago, if you would have walked into a bar and pulled 10 guys out of the bar out into the parking lot and said, okay, I've got $100,000 in my pocket. If you can describe to me what a rear naked choke is, they would think you're talking about a scene in a porn flick, right? It's like, what? Rear naked what? Choke? What? Now, if you go into that bar and pull out 10 people and say, I've got $100,000, if you could tell me what a rear naked choke is, all 10 of those people would likely be able to not only tell you what it is, but demonstrate it. Because the UFC has done a great job of educating and edutaining that MMA audience that up until probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, it was such an obscure niche kind of sport that the general audience just didn't understand it. They didn't know what to get excited about. UFC has done a phenomenal job with that. And that's our goal. Our goal is to replicate the success that UFC had with respect to edutaining our audience. Yeah, you got to teach them what it's all about, but you've got to keep them entertained in the process. Like I said, Chael Sonnen, if Daniel Cormier comes on board, which I think is likely at this point, we're on our way.
Well, when we think about being on our way and we think about edutainment, I think that's the way you called it, maybe we could edutain with a little Blue Chew Max. It's arrived here, and it combines the same active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis, but into one chewable. This is a combo that acts fast and it lasts. And guys, now you can be ready whenever she needs it. Get your first month of Blue Chew free. You see, great sex is just a few clicks away. You sign up at bluechew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is, all of this is done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So what are you waiting for? Find out how easy it is to make your life a little easier by getting harder, and discover your options at bluechew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free. All you got to do is use our promo code 83weeks and then just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code 83weeks when you visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Eric, we got to hit another headline here from this past week that I feel like is worth discussing. This past Sunday night, Joe Hendry was the NXT champion. I say was past tense because he dropped the NXT or the TNT, I'll get it out, the TNA world title to NXT superstar Trick Williams. So now we have a contracted WWE wrestler as the TNA world champion. And just seeing over the weekend photos and screen grabs of Shawn Michaels holding the TNA title was just kind of surreal. I mean, never in a million years did we imagine we would see Shawn Michaels holding a TNA title, much less a WWE superstar being the TNA champion. I know we've talked about the synergies and I stopped short of calling it a partnership, but I guess that's what it is. What do you make of this strategic move here? A WWE star as the TNA champ.
I think it's cool, right? I don't follow TNA. I'm aware of them through social media, and I try to keep up with any news that's coming out of there. But I've noticed over the last couple of months, there's a lot of momentum with TNA. I saw a shot from one of their recent, I don't know if it was a pay-per-view or a TV show, but it looked to me like they were in front of 4,000 to 5,000 people, just estimating by the photo that was online. TNA appears to be gaining momentum. And if I was AEW, I'd be much more concerned about TNA than I would be WWE, because that's your real competition. And if you're not careful, AEW, you're going to find, instead of looking in your rearview mirror and see them coming up from behind you, you're going to be watching them pass you by, because they're gaining steam. And this kind of thing with NXT, and even something as subtle as Shawn Michaels holding up the title, that's a hell of an endorsement. That's a big endorsement to a very large segment of the audience that loves wrestling. So good for TNA. I don't know what their plans are, but whatever they are, they seem to be working. It was a couple of months ago, I read about a new hire, somebody that was going to come in and had some strategies, some strategic plans in order to grow the brand. That's all I know, because I read it online. But if you look at what we're seeing and the indications, much like we're discussing here with the crossover partnership, call it whatever you want, seems to be working.
Yeah, it does seem to be working. There's a little bit of momentum going with TNA right now, and I know that AAA is hoping they're next. I want to bring this up to you because we saw a big announcement on Monday night. It was, of course, a holiday, and Raw was live on Netflix. And at one point during a three-way dance with Penta and maybe it was Dragon Lee and Chad Gable. Either way, Vikingo, who is going to be wrestling at the When Worlds Collide pay-per-view. It'll be Gable versus El Hijo de Vikingo. Well, Vikingo comes up and kicks Chad in the head, and then they show this graphic, which I thought was pretty smart. Let's go ahead and get the word out there. Hey, the afternoon of Money in the Bank, come watch Worlds Collide. It'll be TNA, it'll be WWE, it'll be AAA, and we're going to see El Hijo de Vikingo versus Chad Gable. Now, the trouble is, Eric, you'll see just above their names, it says it's for the AAA Mega Championship. But at that time, and even as of right now, as we're recording, Vikingo is not the AAA Mega Champion. But he is wrestling Alberto Del Rio tomorrow for the AAA Mega Championship. Now, I'm sure there is, I guess creative is subjective. There's two ways to look at this. I never even considered what Jeff Jarrett suggested earlier this week. Not that this was a blunder, not that this was a botch, not that this was a mistake or a spoiler, but the WWE just doesn't think there's a ton of crossover, and only WWE fans are going to see that, so it doesn't matter. Who cares? Where do you land on this, Eric? Is this a spoiler? Is this too much in wrestling? Does it matter?
If I had to bet, I would bet it was just a mistake, because that's fairly common.
Yeah.
That's easier to understand and wrap my head around. I think if I want to stir the pot, I might suggest that it was because nobody cares. I don't think that. I just don't believe that. I believe people are capable of making a mistake. Well-intentioned, highly intelligent, seasoned professionals, guess what? Make mistakes. It's a lot easier to wrap my head around that than somebody in a decision-making capacity going, it doesn't really matter. Let's just do it anyway because nobody's going to know. That's old school. I think that would have happened back in the regional territory days for obvious reasons. It would have even happened during my period of time in WCW before getting into management, probably into the early mid-90s. There wouldn't have been as much concern. But with social media and the awareness and the emphasis and the investment that TKO makes in social media and the management thereof, to suggest that somebody went, "Now we just don't care. Nobody's going to know." I think that's a little weak. Possible, but not a strong probability in my mind.
We heard some other news this week, Eric. I wanted to get your take on. I mean, you know a lot about wrestling on television, and the report is that Smackdown is going to remain a 3-hour show for the foreseeable future.
Ugh.
Originally, I think the show was supposed to go back to 2 hours starting in June of this year, so maybe as soon as next week. But I guess the USA Network has been pleased with the performance of SmackDown, and now they've added a 3rd hour. So I got to admit, I was kind of looking forward to a 2-hour SmackDown. I guess this is good for wrestling and great for the wrestlers there. Maybe they'll get more opportunities, but you made a noise. You're not a big fan of these 3-hour Nitros. 3-hour Thunders. 3-hour SmackDowns either, are you?
3 hours of anything is not every week. I can't think of, Outlander was a series that I loved watching with Lori recently over the last year. I can't imagine watching 3 hours of it every week. There's just not enough time in my head to watch 3 hours of anything like that. And then it's physically, creatively, I should say, really, really, really draining. It's so difficult to hold the audience's attention for 1 hour. 2 hours is a major challenge. 3 hours is asking the impossible. You're stepping into, fan fatigue at that point. No matter how much of a fan you are, it's just not going to hold you for 3 hours. You're almost forcing the audience to go back and watch it on DVR and skip through stuff that doesn't necessarily appeal to them. You're encouraging that pattern of viewing. And yeah, it'll show up in your +1s, your Nielsen ratings, the next day it'll show up. So maybe it doesn't matter from an ad sales perspective. So that's my guess, is they're not as worried about fatiguing the live audience because they know they'll make it up in +1s. But man, it's hard. It's so hard. I'm just glad I'm not the head writer on that show or even on the team, because what a grind. What a grind.
We've got some other news and notes about John Cena. He recently sat down with Stephanie McMahon for her podcast and talked about why he was retiring. And he said something like this: "I can't do those lifts anymore." This was from John Cena's Hard Knocks gym in Florida. "I can't do those lifts anymore because my body's so beat up. As soon as I got through that jagged pill of like, oh man, I'm never going to overhead press 374 pounds ever again. But let's get to work to see what the best I can do for today is. It's a very similar course to WWE. My skills are on regress. If I continue at a full-time capability or involvement, I'm not going to run right. My partner's not going to run right. Our relationship isn't going to run right. Sorry, kid. It's time to close this chapter. I wish I was 18. I wish I felt great because I don't feel more at home, besides in the arms of my wife, than I do on a canvas." So John is basically laying out, hey, he doesn't want to retire, but he feels like he can't do it the way he used to. So that's a sign that it's time to move on. I feel like we've heard a lot of wrestlers say things like this before, but usually it leads to what we've all sort of understood with a wink and a nod was a quote unquote wrestling retirement. This doesn't read like John Cena has any intention of making this a wrestling retirement, Eric.
No. Well, no, I disagree. I think he's done. I think he's going to go through the schedule, and I think he's sincere. I admire him for being able to look at himself objectively. And when you recognize that you're just not able, and here's what I think it is. Here's what it would be for me. If I can try to imagine being in John Cena's shoes as a performer, people have gotten used to seeing a pretty impressive John Cena in the ring, physically. And you can argue he doesn't have the technical wrestling skills. It doesn't matter. He puts on an amazing show. He is an incredible talent that got himself, he's in the Austin, Hogan, Flair, Rock conversation all freaking day long. But he can't deliver to the level of expectation the audience has who have been watching him for the last 10 or 15 years or longer. He's just not that guy anymore. And when you recognize that as a performer, if you're fortunate enough, if you planned your life well enough, you can look at your career and go, you know what? I've been blessed. I've had an amazing amount of success. I know I'm not capable of delivering based on the audience's expectations of who I've been for the last 15 or 20 years. So it's time, rather than holding on and being less than I used to be, I'm going to embrace what was and kiss it goodbye and look back fondly on it. Now, fortunately for John, which separates him from a lot of other professional wrestlers who always end up coming back with a retirement of some way, shape, or form, is that John doesn't financially need it anymore. Number one, he probably never needed another career, but he's got one in Hollywood, a very, very lucrative one. So there's no financial reason for John to pursue, coming back into the ring one more time, the way a lot of the wrestlers have. Because John's been able to carve out a pretty amazing career in Hollywood. Very few people get to do that. Very few people have something to move on to once they leave professional wrestling. And unless they've been able to save their money, which you and I both know, it's generally not the case. It is in some cases it is, but in many cases that's not true, right? So they're more or less forced to find a way to get back every once in a while. John's not in that category. Good for him, and that's why I'm proud of him.
It's going to be really interesting to see how it all winds down for John. I think the entire wrestling world is paying attention to what his 2025 is going to look like. Logan Paul made some comments recently that I saw got your attention on social media. He said something like this on his podcast. It's my understanding that some of my peers are not happy that I get these shots so quickly in my career. Let me break it down for you. In your simple brains, do you think I'm here because I go viral? You see the numbers and you think that's why I'm here. No. The reason I'm given these opportunities so early in my career is A, because I'm fantastic, but B, because I've been getting those impressions for a decade now. And with those impressions comes an audience, a fan base, eyeballs. People watch what I do. They care about what I do. Whether they're on my team, they want me to win. Whether they're wanting me to fail, doesn't matter. They're watching. And that's the currency, attention. So my question for the people who have a problem with my position in the WWE is, who's watching you?
Whew, that was awesome. I responded to that with the money sign. That was so good. And here's what's more interesting. Did you see Karrion Cross's response to Logan's?
I did, yes.
What was it last week when I talked about Dominic Mysterio and how he's using social media? And I kind of conflated an interview with a social media post, but nonetheless, it ended up on social media. I don't know, but here again, Logan Paul just cut a hell of a promo. Hell of a promo. Karrion Cross had a hell of a response. It's organically, potentially, God, I hope I'm right about this. I really, really freaking hope I'm right about this. Because if this is another example of WWE really using social media effectively to plant the seeds of a storyline in social media that then begins to unfold on camera, that's fertile ground. There's a whole lot of fertile ground that you could begin to tell stories and begin stories in a whole new way. Engage the audience before you even see a camera. I so hope I'm right about this, because that will be the next step of the art of sports entertainment, is learning how to use social media effectively. Everybody uses it, but we don't really use it that effectively, especially in the wrestling business. I hope I'm right, man. But that promo was awesome. I'm a big Logan Paul fan, and he's right. Didn't say one thing that wasn't true. Did not say one thing that wasn't absolutely 100% true. So I don't know, man. Fingers crossed. I loved it. And I'm a big fan of Karrion too. Big fan. I think I said on this show a year ago, maybe longer, that I really thought that Karrion Cross is going to be one of the next big stars in WWE. Not the biggest, but one of. Over a year ago, I expected to see something out of Karrion, and we're just now beginning to see it. So I hope I'm right on both counts.
Well, something else you can be right about is saving money at SaveWithEric.com. You know, with all the economic turmoil that's going on in the last few weeks and all the uncertainty it brings, there is one thing I'm pretty certain of, and it's that your house is still worth more than what you paid for it. According to the Zillow Home Value Index, the value of your home is still going up year after year, which means you're most likely sitting on a whole bunch of untapped equity. And maybe you bought your house or refinanced it during those COVID low rate years, and maybe you're wanting to hang on to that. I get that. But here's something to think about. While you do have a great rate on your mortgage payment, what's the interest rate on your credit cards right now? I bet you're probably wiping out all that savings from your low interest rate and more. So what's really more important? Keeping a low rate on the mortgage or saving as much money as you can each month? Really what we're talking about is using the equity you've built up in your home to combine all of that debt into one much lower monthly payment. We just helped a big podcast listener named Andrew do exactly that in Tennessee. We were able to pay off some of his debt, and we got him the cash he needed to make a new roof and some new floors. And now, instead of having to come out of pocket to do those upgrades, he got the cash he needed using the equity in his house. But he also saved over $400 a month. Isn't that wild? He upgraded his house, and now he's got a cheaper monthly payment. We did it at SaveWithEric.com, and Eric and his team can personally run the numbers for you to do that for you right now. There's no cost and no obligation. And if Eric Bischoff can't help you save some money today, he won't waste your time. It costs nothing to look. And I want to remind you, at SaveWithEric.com, you get our year 3 guarantee. Experts all seem to agree that interest rates are going to fall in the next few years. And with our exclusive year 3 guarantee, you get to refinance at any time over the next 3 years with no new lender fees. So it gives you the peace of mind of knowing you're getting the best deal possible for your family today, but you don't have to waste money on a whole new set of closing costs in the future. Get the peace of mind you need and start saving money today at SaveWithEric.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, SaveWithEric.com. Eric, we're going to be wrapping up here. We've got a bunch more questions coming in. I do want to hit a few before we get out of here. Ask a Bum says 3 hours is fine in today's environment because no one watches a full show of anything these days. Anyway, everyone just watches segments. I hate to disagree because I don't watch the entire show, Eric. I have to admit, I usually start a wrestling show on a DVR and then I try to catch up. At best, I'll be caught up by the end of the show, But I'm finding the things I like, and I'm watching those, and I'm fast forwarding the things I don't like. How many wrestling fans do you think consume wrestling like that today in 2025, Eric?
Wild ass guess. Haven't looked at any research, but I would say probably 70, 75%.
Wow.
It's just too easy. It's people take the path of least resistance, no matter what it is. It's human nature. And if you can get your dopamine hit faster and more frequently by fast forwarding through things that just doesn't appeal to you, and you can get right into the dopamine, you're going to do that. It's human nature. You're not going to sit through things that don't necessarily excite you and wait to get to the good stuff when all you have to do is pick up your remote and go, and boom, dopamine hit. I don't know, 70, 75% would be my guess.
Ryan Potter's with us here live, and he says, Eric, please do one mystery opponent per RAF pay-per-view.
I saw that come up earlier. I was thinking about that a little bit, Ryan. That'd be kind of fun. That would be a new twist on freestyle wrestling that people haven't seen before. I might steal that. I'm going to float that. When it comes to this kind of thing, I'm not making those calls. Izzy Martinez and Chad Bronstein will have a lot more to do with that because they're working directly with the athletes and the other sanctioning bodies that we're aligned with. So we can't get play too far outside the lines necessarily, but I think this might be an interesting. I'm going to pitch it.
Something I pitched once upon a time was riding shotgun for a road trip with Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone. We did it. It was called Road Stories. We did it for adfreeshows.com, and we've recently started posting clips over on our YouTube at podcastheatwrestling.com. Let's show you a little clip of what we just posted at podcastheatwrestling.com, Eric.
Those stories where you almost felt alienated, not wanted in Turner sometimes. If people would be down in the food court and have a sandwich at the Wendy's or something, and look at you like you just got off the goddamn a carnival tour.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I may have told you this story, but bear with me or I'll tell it again. Remember we built a little headed studio right down in Denver, okay? You and I were down there right up front, and a couple Turner execs came in, I don't know, CNN execs, and they came through there and they were laughing about all this for wrestling, making fun of us, and you jumped their shit. I don't remember what you said, but I remember like I think the last thing you said was, get on out of here.
Yeah. Well,
and I thought it was great because you were defending us, right?
it's disrespectful.
Yeah, it was
They're
disrespectful.
shitting over what we did for a living.
Exactly.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that to anybody? If that was their choice, that was their lot in life, that's how they're providing for their family, what right do you have to tell me or you or anybody else, us, that that's wrong?
Right. I know. It's just,
So what do you do, asshole? Sell ads? Lick it? So you get a whiter shirt, a bluer jacket, and a red tie?
that's what they were doing. So it was just, and I remember the looks on their faces. They were like, whoa, shouldn't have done this. That was good.
Stand over the bits is all. You have to be a dick.
Go check out Road Stories, available now at podcastheatwrestling.com. Man, is there anybody like Jim Ross? How great was he in that clip, Eric?
Yeah, it was great. That was typical Jim. He's just salty as salty can be, but I love that about him.
We're all pulling for Jim. We hope you guys will continue to share your positive memories with him on social media. Eric, it's going to be a fun weekend for you. You got the big family reunion thing coming up, but I think you're hitting the road for Real American Freestyle after that. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going to be, we've got a field crew, and we're going to be starting to shoot the background packages, the feature packages, and some of our top athletes. We're going to do Kennedy Blades is on the schedule for this week. I can't wait to be a part of that. Kennedy Blades, wait till you meet her. Wait till you meet this woman. Amazing athlete, an even more incredible human being, and just so much charisma. We're going to take a deep dive into Izzy Martinez, one of our founding co-partners. He's got a hell of a story, but does an amazing job as a coach. He's coached some of the top UFC champions, in MMA. Helped them with their ground game. Guys like John Jones, for example. We're going to get to know him, get to know some of the people he coaches. Ben Askren. We're going to sit down with Ben Askren and really get to know Ben. A wrestler that I'm really, really looking forward to getting to know. His name is Real Woods, Real Woods. Wait till you hear this guy's backstory. Absolutely phenomenal. And it's a privilege for me. It's a blessing, no doubt about it, for me to be able to be a part of this and to bring those stories to life, because that, I believe, is going to be one of the things that really makes RAF successful, is the storytelling that we're going to bring to the table.
Stay tuned, boys and girls. We're going to be talking the good, the bad, and the ugly of professional wrestling. And, of course, we'll have all the news that's fit to print, as they say, about Real American Freestyle in the coming weeks. Eric, I love when we get to bounce around and have different conversations about different topics. I'm hopeful we get to see some sort of Goldberg's last match announcement. I'm hopeful that there is going to be a WCW look and feel that weekend. And I kind of pumped to see what they do next weekend, with the idea that we're going to have the first AAA WWE show. Is that something you'll try to watch next Saturday as a matinee opportunity?
I think I will. I will definitely watch it. I may not be able to watch it live, but I'll pick it up and watch it after the fact. I'll be working Saturday. But I definitely want to watch it because it's the first, right? This is another big first. So I want to experience that.
Of course, the original When Worlds Collide pay-per-view was such a big part of Lucha history and WCW history. I can't wait to get your take on what it looks like next week. We'll be talking about it. Stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button. Turn on the notifications bell. You don't want to miss us the next time we're live right here at 83weeks.com.